Father, I am afraid of falling into spiritual delusion. That is good. A person who fears falling into delusion does not become deluded, because he is watchful and reveals all his thoughts. He conceals nothing, and in this way he helps himself. Father, what does it mean to have a predisposition toward spiritual delusion? A predisposition toward spiritual delusion means thinking that you are someone important and trying to show others that you are accomplishing something. It means believing that you have reached a high spiritual state because, for example, you practice a certain degree of asceticism while others have not yet grasped the meaning of the spiritual life, and then behaving proudly toward them. When someone drives himself forward out of egotism in the ascetic struggle, seeking to attain the measure of a saint and be admired by others, this is the beginning of spiritual delusion. Compelling oneself to struggle is one thing. Driving oneself forward out of egotism is another. I once told someone, "Be careful not to fall into delusion through the course you are following. You are not proceeding correctly." "Me, fall into delusion?" he replied. "I do not even eat meat." He would not go to confession. He confessed his sins before an icon. "Are you Orthodox or Protestant?" I asked him. "Where have you found such a thing written?" "Why," he replied, "does Christ not hear me? Just listen to that answer." Father, does bodily asceticism help in the struggle against the passions? If it is used for that purpose, it helps. The body is humbled and the flesh becomes subject to the spirit. But asceticism practiced as an end in itself produces false spiritual feelings because it cultivates the passions of the soul, inflates pride, increases self-confidence, and leads to spiritual delusion. Then such a person draws conclusions about his spiritual progress from the ascetic practices he performs. I do this and that, while that person is still limping along. I have caught up with this saint and surpassed another. Then he throws himself into fasts and vigils. But all of this is wasted because he does not do it in order to cut off the passions, but to satisfy his ego. I knew a monk who practiced asceticism out of pride, and his thoughts told him that he was a great ascetic. He had reached a terrible state. He did not eat, never washed, and lived in indescribable filth. His clothes had fallen apart from being so dirty. I took them to wash them for him, but what was there to wash? They had rotted. Once he told me, "I have surpassed St. John the Hut Dweller." My dear man, was St. John the Hut Dweller sanctified because he did not wash? I asked him. A few days later he came again and told me, "I have surpassed St. Maximus Kavsokalivitis." "What do you mean you have surpassed him?" I asked. "Look, I have gone all around the holy mountain like a spinning top." My dear man, St. Maximus became as though immaterial and flew. He did not wander around like you. Afterward, he began practicing the remembrance of death in a distorted way, saying inwardly, "Now I am in hell." Then, after a short while, supposedly in order to humble himself, he began saying, "Now I am a demon, Satan, and I am going to gather disciples for myself." And so he fell into spiritual delusion. Father, you have said that during prayer we should avoid bringing various images from the life of Christ and similar things into our minds. Why? So that the devil may not deceive us through imaginary representations. The imagination is good. It is a great power when used properly. Some people, for example, can see a landscape and a year later remember it exactly as it was and paint it. This is an ability that God gives to man, but the devil exploits it. Those who fall into delusion imagine whatever they see or read in whatever way they wish, and afterward they believe that imagined picture to be reality. In order to be helped, the poor souls need close supervision, because the devil is continually deceiving them. Therefore, a person who naturally possesses a rich imagination should become concerned when he is told that he is not thinking correctly, and should question his own thoughts. I knew a simple woman who prayed constantly and asked Christ to appear to her in this life, especially because, as she said, she would not see him in the next. And indeed, during Holy Communion, Christ appeared to her inside the holy chalice as an infant, with his hair covered in blood. Then he disappeared, and she was able to receive Holy Communion. After this event, however, the devil began tormenting her with the thought that she was someone important. Then he began tormenting her through her imagination, continually showing her entire scenes like films. Once, when I had gone out into the world, I found her in a house and heard her describing her imaginary experiences to the men and women gathered there. I struggled greatly to bring her back to her senses. The only solution was to give her a firm rebuke in front of everyone, so that her delusions would be exposed and she would humble herself. Were all those things products of her imagination? Imagination and spiritual delusion. Father, did she not tell these things to her spiritual father? Do you know how it is? Satan deceives them through what they see. They do not become concerned and do not think that they should tell their spiritual father. The devil is a master of deception. It is terrifying. If a person does not guard his imagination, the tempter can exploit even a simple, natural event and deceive him. At Stomian Monastery, I used to light the stove during winter while reading Vespers. Women who occasionally came up to the monastery had noticed that the icon of the Mother of God on the iconostasis made cracking sounds during Vespers. I had not noticed it myself. They would say to one another, "While the monk is reading Vespers, the icon of the Mother of God makes cracking sounds." When I heard this, I said, "Let me see this icon that makes cracking sounds." It was not because I do not believe in divine signs. I believe that the Mother of God appears and speaks, and that those who possess a spiritual state see her. But great care is needed. What had happened? The icon was old and had wooden battens set into its back. When the fire burned in the stove, the batten became warm and expanded, making the cracking sound. I drove in a nail, and the sound stopped. Then I asked the women, "Do you hear any sound now?" "No," they replied. "Well then, do not attach importance to it," I told them. "Great care is needed. If the imagination is gradually cultivated in this way, a person's entire life can be ruined." Father, how can someone understand whether an event is from God or from the devil? It becomes evident. If it is not from God, the devil brings the person proud thoughts. Moreover, everything the devil does is crude. He eventually leads the person into blasphemy. Once a spiritually deluded and demon-possessed man came to the hut. I told him a few things and helped him. Do you know what he said to me? "This is the first time I have ever heard these things. I have not even read them in the Gospel." In other words, he was practically telling me, "You have explained them better than Christ. Do you understand what the devil does in order to bring you a proud thought?" In any case, unless a person understands that he can do nothing through his own power, but that whatever he does is accomplished by the power of Christ, then even if he casts thousands of demons out of the possessed, he has accomplished nothing. A person who has never experienced a higher paradisiacal joy and therefore has no spiritual experience can easily be deceived if he is not careful. The devil is cunning. He subtly stirs a person's heart and gives him a pleasant feeling. Then he deceives him by giving him the impression that this pleasure is spiritual and divine. He steals the person's heart, and the person believes that he is doing well. "I felt no disturbance," he says. Yes, but what he felt was not true spiritual joy. Spiritual joy is something heavenly. The devil can appear as an angel or as a saint. A devil disguised as an angel or saint spreads disturbance, which is what he possesses, while a true angel or saint always spreads paradisiacal joy and heavenly gladness. A humble and pure person, even if he has no experience, can distinguish an angel of God from the devil who appears as an angel of light, because he possesses spiritual purity and is spiritually akin to the angels. But an egoistic and carnal person is easily deceived by the cunning devil. The devil who appears as an angel of light disappears when a person brings a humble thought to mind. One night at Stomion Monastery, after Compline, I was sitting on a small stool in my cell, praying the Jesus prayer. Suddenly, I heard instrumental music coming from a guest house a little farther away. I was surprised. What music is this that sounds so close? I wondered. The monastery's feast day had already passed. I rose from the stool and went to the window to see what was happening outside. Everything was silent. Then I understood that it had come from the evil one in order to interrupt my prayer. I returned and continued praying. Suddenly, a powerful light filled the cell. The ceiling disappeared, the roof opened, and a pillar of fire could be seen reaching up to heaven. At the top of this pillar of fire appeared the face of a young blond man with long hair and a beard, who resembled Christ. Because I could see only half of his face, I rose from the stool in order to see him fully. Then I heard a voice within me. You have been found worthy to see Christ. But who am I, unworthy as I am, to be found worthy to see Christ? I said. Then I made the sign of the cross. Immediately the light and the supposed Christ disappeared, and I saw that the ceiling was in its proper place. If a person does not keep his mind securely guarded, the evil one can introduce a proud thought and deceive him through imaginary scenes and false lights. These lights do not ascend to heaven, but cast a person down into chaos. For this reason, a person must never ask for lights, divine gifts, or similar things, but for repentance. Repentance brings humility, and afterward the good God gives him whatever is absolutely necessary. When I was at Sinai, in the cave of Saint Episteme, the evil one wanted to serve me. The cave had 3 or 4 steps. During nights illuminated by the stars, I would go among the caves, and when I needed to descend, I would light a lighter. Once, as I was going down, I tried to light it, but it would not ignite. Suddenly, I saw a light shining from a rock like a searchlight. In an instant, everything around me was illuminated. I have no need of such lights, I said, and turned back. Immediately the light disappeared. You see, the devil did not want me to use my lighter to go down. Is it not a shame for him to struggle like that? He supposedly said, Let me give him some light. See how kind the devil is. Father, how did you understand that it was not from God? Well, such things can be understood. Terrifying. Father, I am tormented by disturbing dreams. Whenever you have a disturbing dream, never examine what you saw, how you saw it, whether you are guilty or how guilty you are. The evil one comes at night because he was unable to tempt you during the day. Sometimes God permits him to tempt us in dreams so that we may see that the old man within us has not yet died. At other times, the enemy approaches a person during sleep and shows him various dreams so that he will be distressed when he awakens. Therefore, do not attach any importance to them. Make the sign of the cross over yourself and your pillow. Place a cross and 1 or 2 icons on the wall above the pillow where you sleep, and pray the Jesus prayer until sleep comes. The more importance you attach to dreams, the more frequently the enemy will come to tempt you. This does not happen only to adults, but also to children. Even with very small children, although they are little angels, the enemy goes and frightens them while they are sleeping, causing them to wake suddenly, scream, and run frightened and weeping into their mother's arms. At other times, angels approach them, and the children laugh in their sleep and awaken because of their great joy. Therefore, dreams brought by the tempter are an external influence he exerts upon a person while he is asleep. Father, what about when you feel a pressure while sleeping? Sometimes this is caused by a state of anxiety experienced during the day, or by various fears, suspicions, and similar things. Naturally, the evil one can use all of these things, connect them together in some way, and confuse the person. Often, sleep is so light that the one sleeping believes he is awake and prays to escape the constriction that is even restricting his breathing. Sometimes the devil can assume the appearance of a person or a saint and appear to someone in a dream. Once he appeared to a sick man in the form of Saint Arsenios and said, "I am Saint Arsenios. I have come to tell you that you are going to die. Do you hear me? You are going to die." The man was terrified. A saint would never speak to a sick person in this manner. Even if the sick person were going to die, and a saint appeared to inform him of his death, he would speak with kindness. Because God has seen that you are suffering, he will take you from this life, but try to prepare yourself. He would not say, "Do you hear me? You are going to die." "Father, what about when someone cries out in his sleep?" That is better because he wakes up. Many dreams result from anxiety. When a person is anxious or exhausted, these things struggle within him, and he sees them in his dreams. Many times, when during the day I face people's various problems, injustices that occur, and so forth, afterward in my sleep, I argue with someone. "My dear man, you have no fear of God. You are insensitive." I shout and awaken from my own shouting, "Father, can someone foresee through dreams what is going to happen to him?" No, do not pay attention to dreams. Whether they are pleasant or unpleasant, we must not believe in them because there is a danger of spiritual delusion. 95% of dreams are deceptive. That is why the Holy Fathers tell us not to pay attention to them. Very few dreams come from God. But even in order to interpret these, a person must possess purity and other qualities, as Joseph and Daniel did, for they had a gift from God. "I will tell you," Daniel said to Nebuchadnezzar, "both the dream you saw and what it means. But consider the spiritual state Daniel had attained. He was among the lions, and although they were hungry, they did not touch him." Habakkuk brought him food, and Daniel said, "God has remembered me." If God had not remembered his prophet, whom would he have remembered? Father, some people do not dream. It is better that they do not. They spend nothing on tickets or petrol. In a dream, you see in a single minute something that in reality would have taken hours or days to observe, because the ordinary sense of time is suspended. From this, anyone can understand the psalm. 1,000 years in your sight, O Lord, are like yesterday when it has passed. Father, when people tell us about visions or say that they have seen a saint, what should we tell them? It is good to tell them to remain reserved. This is safer because not everyone can discern whether a vision comes from God or from the devil. Even if the vision were from God, a person should not accept it. In a certain sense, this draws God's mercy when he sees that his creature does not accept the vision, because this reveals humility. If the one who appeared truly was a saint, God knows how to inform the soul afterward in another way and guide it toward what he desires. Care is needed because the evil one may come, press the button, and turn on the television. I knew a soul who had received no help from people, and for that reason God granted her help. God showed her something in order to assist her. Afterward, however, the devil brought her thoughts such as, "Since God has found you worthy to see this vision, perhaps he is preparing you for something higher." From the moment she believed such a thing, the devil began doing his work and ordering her about. But in the end, God again had mercy on that soul. She had a vision and heard a voice telling her, "Write to Father Paisios about all the visions you have had." And so she wrote me a letter describing all her visions. The tempter had thoroughly confused her. She truly had visions, but they were all from the devil. Of all the visions she had seen, Only the first and the last were from God. God permitted the last one in order to bring her to her senses and help her become free from spiritual delusion. In the end, the poor woman obeyed what I told her and was delivered. Father, how can you tell whether someone is spiritually deluded? You can tell even from his appearance. A spiritually deluded person displays a false outward dispassion. He appears humble and gentle, but within himself he conceals the exalted opinion he has of himself. If you look into his eyes, you will see that he regards other people as though they were miserable little ants. But you can also recognize him by the things he says. There was a spiritually deluded man whom many people regarded as a saint. He claimed that Christ had appeared to him riding a horse, holding a flask of wine in his hand. Christ supposedly gave him some of the wine to drink, and from that moment he received the gift of foresight. Once, while he was speaking to a group of people, someone asked him, "Why can I not perform miracles too?" "Because you committed this sin and that sin," the man replied. The poor person panicked and came to tell me. "Tell me," I said to him, "do the saints ever make a spectacle of people?" "Only the devil does that. Do you not understand that the devil is speaking through him? And even when the things a spiritually deluded person says happen to be true, they are still being spoken by the devil." A woman told me that some people had taken a demon-possessed woman to someone they had heard was able to cast out demons. He took them to a small abandoned church. As soon as they entered, the man took a priestly stole and placed it around his neck. The woman was astonished. "A layman wearing a priestly stole." "Are you a priest?" she asked him. "What does priest even mean?" he replied, and began judging priests. In this way, the poor people understood that he was deluded, and they left. Father, is a spiritually deluded person also insane? Not always. Spiritual delusion is one thing and insanity is another. Some people are merely deluded, while others become deluded, and their minds are damaged as well. I knew a monk on the holy mountain who obeyed no one. He had left his monastery and wandered around the mountain. 4 or 5 times he supposedly went away to live as a hermit, and I advised him to return to the monastery where he had been tonsured. In the end, he bought a hut and lived alone. After 7 months, he came to see me. "Return to your monastery," I told him. "I have now received my release papers from the monastery, and they will no longer accept me there." "Be careful. Be very careful," I told him. "At least try to live under an experienced father, so that you may practice obedience and not live according to your own will." "I will obey the will of God," he replied. "Go to a monastery," I told him. "I am a hermit now. How can I go back?" "You go," he replied. "Should I go alone? If you want me to come with you, I will do so with all my heart," I told him. "Listen," he said. "If the life of a stillness has become difficult for you, and you want to go to a monastery, then you go." When I saw him behaving with such insolence, I left him alone. After a short time, I learned that he had become demon-possessed and had also lost his mind. The devil appeared to him in the form of the Mother of God and said, "My son, if you bow down before me, I will give you the 7 gifts of the Holy Spirit." He thought, "Now I will receive 7 gifts and leave everyone speechless." Then he fell to the ground and bowed down. The moment he bowed, the devil shook him violently, and he became demon-possessed. Through this violent shaking, he also lost his mind. Afterward, he went to the holy community in order to become the protos of the holy mountain. He locked the fathers who were there inside, took the protos's staff, and descended the stairs proudly. Those outside saw another protos coming down the stairs. A few of them discreetly followed him in a car, and farther down they took him with them and brought him to a psychiatric hospital. The demonic activity has now receded, but the insanity remains. Father, is a spiritually deluded person not also in a certain way demon-possessed? What else could he be? It is even possible for a spiritually deluded person to have more demons than someone who is visibly possessed. Nevertheless, a spiritually deluded person is one thing, and a demon-possessed person is another. Beware of spiritually deluded people. There are 2 or 3 spiritual fathers who combine a little piety with a certain disturbance of the mind and confuse people. They classify everyone as demon-possessed. They listen to no one. I am a priest, they say. I have authority. If you hear of such cases, tell people to be careful of such priests, because men like these harm the church. Tell them, find a good spiritual father and go to him so that you may receive spiritual benefit. They have reached the point of using my name and even my photograph to give people the impression that they have some connection with me. Of course, some such people have mitigating circumstances because they are light-minded and careless. But there are also some truly malicious individuals who pass vinegar off as wine. One man was originally an accountant and worked somewhere. Now he wanders throughout northern Greece presenting himself as my disciple. He says that I gave him the gift of foresight and 4 or 5 other spiritual gifts. In this way, he deceives people and collects money. Is he a clergyman? No, a layman. Once he saw me in Daphne and hid so that I would not see him because he is supposedly my true son. Fortunately, he drinks and reeks of spirits. Some people see him drunk and begin to have doubts. How many such swindlers exist, exploiting people's suffering and turning it into a business? Someone told a widow, "One of your husband's hands has not decayed because his soul needs prayer." What am I to do now? The poor woman thought. I should give him money so that he may pray for my husband's soul. After taking a considerable amount of money from her, he soon told her, "There, we have escaped the first danger. Things are somewhat better now." And she continued giving him money until he had taken half her fortune, supposedly so that her husband might find rest. There are some spiritually deluded people who make the sign of the cross over the sick, mutter something, and supposedly heal them. People are deceived and do not go to confession, call a priest to serve holy unction, or ask him to read a prayer over them. Instead, they go to these deceivers and give them large amounts of money. I was told that in one village there were 2 deluded men who had a very effective cooperation. The devil would give one of their fellow villagers, for example, a severe headache or pain in the lower back. Then he would go to one of the deluded men and tell him, "So-and-so has a severe headache for this particular reason." When an opportunity arose, the deluded man would tell his fellow villager, "I know why your head hurts," and he would immediately reveal the supposed cause. "It is true. What a revelation," the villager would say. "And what must I do for it to pass?" "Go to so-and-so," the first man would tell him, sending him to the other deceiver. Do you see what the devil devised in order to keep people in delusion? He made 2 deluded men cooperate, one to establish the diagnosis and the other supposedly to perform the healing, thus keeping people away from the church. Father, why do people so often take their problems to spiritually deluded individuals? Because the devil has cheap spiritual gifts and people accept them easily. What such deceivers tell people to do is not difficult, and it caters to their passions. Instead of repenting of the sins they commit in the world and going to a spiritual father to confess, they find deluded people, which means the devil himself, and ask him to solve their problems. Afterward, they suffer without realizing that the devil has bound them and now orders them around. And how do they come to trust them, Father? People are confused and spiritually disoriented. How many claim that they guide people along the right path while carrying on their shoulders a sack in which the devil is hidden? The good God, however, does not allow the devil to conceal himself completely. Sometimes the devil lets a horn or his tail show. People see it and cry out in fear. What is that? A horn? A tail? No, what are you talking about? It is only an eggplant, the deceivers tell them. In this way, they deceive them and present demonic things as good and beneficial. One day, a deluded man came here accompanied by several others. He had about 10 people with him and was posing as their spiritual father. I asked them, "Do you belong to some organization?" They did not answer. "To some association?" They did not answer. "Do you have a spiritual father?" Nothing. They began making prostrations. He had brought them here in order to deceive them. Afterward, he would tell everyone, "We also went to Father Paisios and he agrees with us." Do you understand? I should not even have received him, because afterward he exploited that visit. It was clear that he was suspicious. It was clear that his disciples had been drawn in through deception. The poor people fell to their knees. "Did you tell them anything, Father?" "I did, but the evil one tells them something else when they leave here. He twists them this way and that and leads them back onto his own path." Father, how can someone protect himself from such deluded people? By remaining within the fold of our church. Of course, if someone follows a deluded person out of ignorance, God will not abandon him. He will help him understand his mistake and return to the truth. Father, what helps a person with misguided ideas return to his senses? He must recognize the wretched condition he is in, place no trust at all in his own thoughts, confess all his thoughts to his spiritual father, and obey everything his spiritual father tells him. He must continually ask for God's mercy so that divine grace may return. In other words, he must humble himself in order to come to his senses and be saved. And indeed, the judgments of God are unfathomable. Ah, his love has no limits. A certain man used to come frequently to the hut and was completely consumed by misguided ideas. No matter how much I told him, he would not listen at all. He interpreted everything in the opposite way. When he left the holy mountain, he delivered sermons and caused great harm. He claimed that he had received instructions from me and confused people. Even some books that I had once given him as a blessing, he displayed as evidence so that people would believe that he consulted with me. Once, while he was saying many things, divine grace completely withdrew from him for a moment, and he began hurling vile insults at Christ and the Mother of God. The people were scandalized and scattered. Afterward, they took him away in a van and confined him in a psychiatric hospital. Do you see how far the love of God reaches? He permits even his name to be blasphemed so that his creatures may be helped and delivered. Father, if a spiritually deluded person recognizes his condition and repents, will his disciples also repent? If his repentance is genuine, he must humble himself, tell them that he was mistaken, and try to bring them back to the right path. But if the deceptions of a deluded person are exposed and he himself remains in delusion, then his disciples must be carefully enlightened with discernment. Because some deluded people eventually operate from within the church, there is a danger that their disciples may become scandalized and uprooted from the church if they suddenly discover that everything they were told was a lie.